Hey guys, this is Dave from the Floodwood Shop. We're working on our nightstand project. Last time we were together, we glued the nightstand together. We had it clamped in the front. We put our back on it, glued it together, put it in one piece, and made our box for our cabinet. So that's where we're at. We got the box for our cabinet. Now what we have to do is make our face frame. We have our material list here that we had created, you guys had created in class. This is the material list we're going off of. So now what we have to do is we have to create our stiles and our rails. Remember, our stiles are the verticals. Stiles are verticals, one on each side, and our rails are the horizontals. So just in terminology's sake, stiles are vertical, rails are horizontal. In our list we have two stiles that are 1.5 by 27.25. This cabinet itself, this box, is 27.25 inches tall. I don't know if you can see that dimension or not, but it's 27.25 inches tall. So our stiles are going from the floor to the top of this box, and there'll be one on each side. So we have two of those, 1.5 inches, they'll be flush here, it'll hang in 3/4 inch into the box. Then we have two other rails that are 1.5 by 17 inches. So we'll have 1.5 rail horizontally across here for the top of the cabinet, another 1.5 rail flush with this spreader, 1.5 going across here, and then on the bottom we have one more rail, but that one's going to be 3 inches, and that'll go flush across here in between the two stiles. So we'll work on cutting those next, and we're going to rip them on the table saw. One thing to do when you're cutting your pieces is determine how much material are you going to need. How much 1.5 strips are you going to need? So that way you can decide how to cut your board. I've got 1 by 8 foot poplar. They're 3/4 inch by 7.25 inches wide by 8 feet long. Anytime you hear dimension 1 by 8 in dimensional lumber, it means that it's not 1 inch thick, it's 3/4 inch thick. It's not 8 inches wide, it's 7.25 inches wide. The only thing that's going to be that length will be that dimension will be the length itself at 8 feet. But if you have let's say a 2x4 lumber for framing, a 2x4 is 1.5 by 3.5, 1.5 thick, 3.5 inches wide. So just so you know that, it starts out as a 2 inch by 4 inch board, then after it's planed down and dried, that's the ending result is 1.5 by 3.5 as a standard. Or the wood we're using here, the poplar, it's a 1 by 8, and after it's been milled and planed down, it ends up being 3/4 by 7.25. So we have an 8 foot board, and we got to figure out here if we can, how many pieces can we get out of an 8 foot board. So we've got basically just simple 30 inches, 60. So we've got 60 inches for vertical. That's actually 4 inches more than we need. So we need 56 inches for our vertical stiles. And then we have two rails that are also 1.5 inches. They're going to be about 17 inches long. So 17 and 17 is 34. So 56 and 34, we have 90 inches. So we can get out of 1.5 inch wide by 8 foot long rip, we can get all of our stiles and rails that we need. The only thing that we're going to have left is our 3 inch for the bottom. So on the saw, we're going to have to make 2 rips. We'll make one rip at 1.5 inches. We'll make another rip at 3 inches. So we'll go over the table saw next and do that. Okay, we're over at our table saw. So now we're going to make a 1.5 inch rip, but we can't just rip our stile and our rails at 1.5 inches. because we're going to end up creating a saw edge on our board. So we're going to have to joint it off. And we're actually going to end up joining both edges of the board. So when I set the fence up, instead of doing 1.5 inches, I went a 1/16 bigger. So I've got the saw blade set up at 1 9/16. I measure from the fence to the tooth of the blade. Remember, your teeth, they point either right or left, alternating. Every other one alternates, points right or left, and you measure to the tooth that points towards the fence. I set the fence at 1 9/16. I lock it, I check it, make sure that it's on. If it needs any adjustment, I read my tape measure and see if it's got to move a 32nd or whatever. Then I look at my gauge here and I adjust it. The gauge is relatively close, but it's not perfect. So once that is done, we're ready to start ripping. Remember, I told you anytime you're ripping anything smaller than 3 inches, you need to have a push stick. So I have a push stick set up here on the saw, have my safety glasses. So remember, you always got to have your safety glasses. We'll make this rip, we'll adjust the saw to 3 inches. We'll actually, instead of going 3 inches, we'll go 3 1/16 again. And then when we get these boards cut, we're going to go over to the joiner. Actually, we'll go over to the chop saw, we'll cut things to length first. So let's rip this. We need one rip at 1 9/16 for ripping it. When you're ripping it, hold one hand here, keeping pressure against the fence, and you're watching here, up against the fence, make sure you don't have any gaps, and you're feeding it through. Cut the saw off. You notice as I'm pushing it through, my right hand is literally the hand that's doing all the pushing. My left hand is keeping pressure up against the fence so that way it doesn't move. Now I'm going to set this up at 3 1/16. That's what we got of that, so we'll make one more rip at 3 1/16. And there's our boards. So, when you're ripping, remember, anywhere this red plate is, anywhere that red plate is, you don't want to have your fingers. So if you're pushing your board through, when you get to that red plate, you should have your fingers gone, and then you're using a push stick, okay? So now we'll go over the chop saw. We're going to cut these to length. We're going to cut them a little bit long to start out with, and then we'll come back and we'll cut them exact. We'll cut our stiles, we're going to cut to the exact length. Our rails, we're going to wait. Once we get these stiles put, we're going to butt them together. We know we need 20 inches total, so we're going to butt them together. Hold 20 inches and see what we're going to need exactly. And we're actually going to make it just a hair bigger than the cabinet. Not much. The cabinet is 20 inches wide. We're going to make it just a hair bigger. And then we can sand that edge off. That way, if there's any discrepancies anywhere, it's going to allow us to sand it off. And we can do that because this is a painted material, a painted cabinet. We don't have to worry about being as precise or as exact as you would if this were a finished oak panel or birch panel or on the sides of your cabinet. If those were finished wood, you wouldn't want to run these larger. You'd want to make them as flush as possible. So we'll go to the chop saw, we'll cut these down to size, and then from there we'll go to the joiner. Okay, so we're at the chop saw now. So we need to cut two pieces that are 27¼ Those are our two styles. And then we need 3 other ones at 17 inches. We're going to cut the 27¼ at 27¼ The other 3 we're going to cut an inch longer for now, so we're going to cut them at 18 inches. Just so we can have them a little more manageable to run across the joiner, and we'll determine the length later. So there's a gauge on here with a stop, and I'll zoom the camera in so you can see it. So the stop set up, there's a tape measure on there, and that tape measure and the stop is pretty accurate. There's a black line through that piece of plexiglass. You line that up with the dimension, tighten the knob, and you can use that stop if you're going to cut multiple pieces. That way you're cutting them all the exact same length. So we need to cut 27¼ One way to check to make sure the gauge is right on here, I got it set right at 27¼ I have just a piece of scrap, and so I'm going to put it on here, cut it, and then I'm going to measure it to see if I'm right on, and it measures 27¼ So that was, I'm just checking the gauge. Every time when you first use it, you just want to check the gauge to know if it's right. So now I know that this gauge is exactly on, so I can cut my boards. This end is a factory end. Anytime you got a factory end, you need to look at it. Look to see if there's any splinters, splits, cracks, anything in there, and cut that off first. Either way, you want to cut off about an inch. But you also got to remember how much length of the board you have to work with. We know that we're going to need around 90 some inches. This is 96, so we've got enough length that we can cut off an inch. Want to make sure you're holding the board tight up against the fence, pushing tight and holding down. Start your saw about an inch to 2 inches away from your board, your blade away from your board. Don't need to start it up here. Start it down here. When you start it, the motor is going to kick in and it's going to want to pull. So be ready for that. So as you get it automatically, as that motor starts to turn, it's going to pull up. So be ready for that. You make your cut, you hold this chop saw down until the blade stops, and then you pull it back up. Always make sure you push this all the way down. This is also a sliding, so make sure you push it all the way down and push it all the way back to make sure you've cut all the way through. So now we've got one end cut. We can butt up against our stop and make our 2 style lengths. There's one. And there's 2. So now we have these 2 we know are the exact same length. Now we need 3 of them at 17 inches, but I said we'll cut them an inch bigger for now. We'll come back and get an exact length once we get the boards jointed. So I moved it to 18. Wait for the saw to come to a stop. Now we have our top 2 rails. They're the same way. And we end up with, we cut 1 inch off the one end, and we have 4 inches left here, so we had 5 inches of waste. Plus we made these boards 1 inch longer than what we needed. Now we have our bottom rail. We've got to remember the same thing. We're going to cut 1 inch off, hold it tight against the fence. Wait for the saw to come to a complete stop. We're cutting this the exact same length. One thing that's key, we've got 2 different size rails. We have a 3 inch and 1.5 inches. We want to make sure that we're cutting our lengths at the same time. Because if we set the saw up, even a 30-second is going to make a difference when you put these together in between, because these are going in between the styles. If one's a little bit longer, it's going to create a bow, it's going to make it all square. So we want to make sure that we cut them all at the same time. Okay, so we've got our pieces cut. We'll go over to the joiner and we're going to joint both of these edges, clean them up, and then we'll come back and cut our rails to the exact size. Alright, we're at our joiner here, and we have to join our edges. You can see on here, see a little burnt mark. We don't have the greatest blade in the table saw. And if you look at the board, you can see the saw curves on the edge of the board. But we're going to run this through on both edges to clean it up. And we need to take off a 16th hole. So there's a gauge down here and adjustment knobs. And I set this at 30 seconds. And I adjusted the knob, tightened it back up, got it at 30 seconds. And I take my square and I'm going to make sure that the fence is square. Set it tight on the bed, go up to the fence, make sure that there's no gap in between it. So I adjusted that. It was a little bit off, so now I've got this fence square to this bed. So when we run this board through, it's not leaning one way Okay, so we got our pieces all jointed, our edges are all cleaned up. We just want to cut these to the right length now. Actually, it was jointed. The joiner blades need to be sharpened a little bit. This one edge of this one, it chipped it on the edge, so it's a good thing we're long. We're going to be able to cut it off. But we need to find out what length it is. And I measured the cabinet, the box, and the box measures 20 inches, just a hair over. So it's not a 32nd, and more like a 64th. So 20 and a 64th. So what I'm going to do is my two stiles, I'm going to hold them tight together. I'm going to place the 20 and a 64th on this side. I'm just reading the exact same thing that I read when I measured the cabinet. Line it up, and then read the other side. And it tells me that I can cut them at 17 inches. So we're going to cut these at 17, and I'm just going to go about a 64th. 17 and a 64th, we'll cut our three rails. So I've got the fence set up. I took a piece of scrap. I already checked the dimension just to make sure. And we've already got, the ends are squared. I know I have one end that was chipped. So now we're just going to cut those three pieces. Again, we're cutting all three pieces. Make sure you look at each end. I could square up each end again, but if the one end is fine, I don't need to, so I'm just going to cut. We'll make all three cuts. Again, look at each end, see if it's okay. Now we have the 5 pieces that we need. We have our 2 stiles and our 3 rails. Now we go to the pocket screw jig. So we'll get that set up. We'll get it marked. One thing with the pocket screws, we don't have to do anything with our stiles. The only thing we have to do is we need to put a pocket screw hole on the end of each of our rails. So I want to look at my boards and I want to determine which is the nicest side. Once I determine that, I'm going to put an X on that side. I don't have a pencil on me. So I'll look at them, I'll put an X on the best side. That's the side I'm always going to have up. The 1.5 boards are just going to have one hole. Right in the center. The bottom 3.5, we're going to put a hole on each, close to each edge. On each end, close to each edge, we'll have 2 holes. So we'll get our pocket screw jig out and we'll get those cut. Okay, so we have our pocket screw jig here. We have a fence, and on the fence, on the back side here, on each side, they have markings. They have 1.5 inch, 3/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and those are for the thickness of your material. So I've got it set, this is 3/4 inch thick material. So I've got the back side of the fence lined up with that 3/4, got it clamped down. I marked the face of every piece on each end, and when I put these in here, all I'm going to do is slide the board in. There's a tape measure on this fence. You probably can't see it, but there's a tape measure on this fence. This board's 1.5 inch wide, so I'm just going to line it up. It's got 3/4 on this side, 3/4 on that side. Push it tight to the fence. I'm going to look here. There's lines on here just to make sure I'm parallel. And then it's just simply clamp it down so it can't raise up. It's got a button and a trigger. Now we're just going to hold it down, squeeze the trigger, and pull. And we have made a hole for a pocket screw. Flip it around end for end, do the same thing. Make sure that the X side is up. Clamp it down. Line it up parallel here. And cut. Do that. Just repeat the same thing for each one. Clamp it down. Making sure that when you pull the lever, that you're pulling it all the way. Make sure you don't stop halfway. It has to go all the way down. And then just hold it there for half a second. So now our double one, there's a mark on here, a darker gray mark, it says edge. So I'm just going to line up each edge with that. Follow my parallel again, tighten it down. Put a mark, so there's one. Slide it over to the other edge. Make sure I'm parallel again, tighten it down. And I have 2 pocket screw holes. Again, do that to both edges. And there we have all of our pocket holes. So now we're ready to glue, screw, and clamp this together. Okay, so now we're here, we've got everything cut, everything's cut to length, our pocket holes have been cut in. Now we're going to start putting this together. We use pocket screws. And there's 2 different types of pocket screws, but numerous different types of lengths. When you go to Menards or Home Depot or most stores that'll sell these, on the back side there'll be a chart. It'll tell you, like we've got 3/4 inch material. We take 3/4 inch material, we need 1 1/4 long screws. So we have 1 1/4 long screws. But now there's also another part. This box here, they're 1 1/4, but they're for hardwoods. Hardwoods be oak, maple, things like that. This poplar, it's a soft wood, so we don't want to use these hardwoods. It's not going to work well for us. So we'll use the 1 1/4 soft or plywoods, and it's a coarser thread. It's going to grab the material better. So that's what we want to use is 1 1/4, and it takes a square-headed number 2 tip, and it comes with, if you get a Craig jig, it comes with a longer tip. This is I don't know if it's a 6-inch. Yeah, it's a 6-inch bit. So you need a 6-inch bit, the 1 1/4 screws. I've got an open container here. Then you need a clamp, and you get your clamp set up so when you clamp it, you're going to clamp these boards together, and this is going to hold them flush here. So you're going to clamp it together when you go to put your pocket screws in. And then obviously you need glue. So when you lay this out, remember we have our drawer. So we have to mark where this is going to be. If you go from the top down, when we cut our dados in, if you can remember, we wanted to have our 7 inches to the top side of our rail. And if I check here, this should have been 7 inches strong. And that's exactly what it is. It's 7 inches strong. So I need to put a mark on the back side. When you're putting your pocket screws in, everything's on the back. So when you lay these face down, you got to remember when you're looking at it, when they're upside down, your right side is actually your left side. So over here I've got my bottom right, my top right. I marked these out so I know this is the right side. I looked at them to figure out all the good edges and faces. So I know that this is my right side. When it's flipped upside down, my right side is actually on the left. I measured from the top down. I put a mark at 7 inches. That's going to be the top of that rail. We'll screw that together. So we'll start out and we'll put some glue on the edge, when you gotta look at these, there might be a little bit of a burr you gotta clean off. All we're gonna do is throw some glue on the bottom. Spread it out nice. Make sure it covers the whole thing. And then we're laid flat. You need it hanging off the end of your table so you can get your clamp on ideally. Get your clamp, line the bottom up flush. Make sure it's tight, make sure it's flush, and now we have 2 screws that we're going to put in. Just set them in there. There's a pilot hole for them. Screw it together. And we have our first one on there. Once it's screwed together, it's all good to go. You don't have to worry about anything else. And we'll just work our way down the line. So I'll just get these put together, and we'll go from there. And there is our face frame. So our face frame is ready to go. We can actually, next thing we'll do, we're going to mount it onto our box. I'm going to clean up the glue a little bit before it dries and hardens. It's going to be painted on the wet rag, clean it off. And then we're going to glue the cabinet, and we're going to put it on. And we can check this for square, measuring diagonally. Make sure we're the same, and we are right on 33 and 3/16 diagonally both directions. So that's good. If we wanted to, now that we know it's square, we know the cabinet's square, we could actually just let it sit. But we'll go ahead and fasten it and get that done. Okay, so next I put my box on the floor just so it's easier to work with. And I'm just going to set my frame on there just to check. I'm going to line up my 2 tops, make sure that they're flush, line up my sides, make sure they're flush, and just see how everything fits. Make sure everything is good where I want it on my shelves, just in case you measured something wrong, and it all looks good. So now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to run beads of glue on the spreaders, on the sides, and on this across the bottom. So we're just going to glue everything, and then we're going to take the finish gun and I have 1.5" nails put in here. That's what we're going to use to nail it down. So I'm just going to spread out this glue, make sure I cover everything nice. If I need to add a little more, I can. Okay, I've got it all glued. Now we're going to put our face frame down. So we're going to make sure when we're laying this down that we're paying attention. We're lining up the edge here, just kind of like when we put the back on, so we don't get any excess glue where we don't want it. And lie it down. And we're going to start at our top. Just going to center it left and right, make sure we're good. And have our nail gun. We're going to put a nail there. Come to the other side, line it up. Put a nail there. Now we can come across the top. We'll just put a couple nails. It's right in the center. So now our cabinet will stay, and we'll just work our way down. Just put a few nails in, get it flush here. Now come to the other side, do the same thing. Push down tight. Put a few nails in. Now the same thing on our center rail. We'll put just a couple nails, and the same thing on our bottom here. We'll put a couple nails in that, and that bottom bows a little bit so I can move it, and that's nailed on. We'll just take a wet rag, clean up any of the excess glue while it's still wet, or we can wait till it dries. If it was a stained cabinet, again, I'd wait till it dries, and then I would clean it off. I want to go around on all the edges and try to get it even where I can't see it, just so I don't have a run later. And there we go. You could clamp this on if you wanted to without shooting nails. You could clamp the face frame to the box without using any nails. It's a painted cabinet, so I'm not worried about it. We can fill those. We're not going to see them. So it's a quicker process because now I can shoot it. It's actually good. I could start sanding the face frame, sanding the cabinet at this point. So the nails take a step away. Allows you to move a little bit quicker through the project. So now the cabinet's ready. The box itself is ready to be sanded for paint. So next week there's not going to be a door on here, there's just going to be a drawer. So next week either we're going to make a drawer or we're going to make a top. I'm not sure which one we're going to do. We'll find out next week. Thanks for watching, guys.